In October of 2022, I took a 2-hour shuttle bus to the airport, and that's how I met Ryan and Brad, aka DoubleTake. They introduced themselves as international champion yodelers. So I asked them to yodel for me, and I was inspired. I asked them if I could do an interview with them someday. 8 months later, we finally made it happen. As I got to know them, I became more curious about what their mother would say about her experience raising them. I thought it would be inspiring to share her story, and luckily she was willing to share it, and that is this video. Mary, thank you so much for allowing me the privilege to share your son's story today. I know your time is super valuable, so I'm just going to get right into the questions. Tell us about the first time you noticed that Ryan and Brad had a talent for yodeling.
Hi, Lisa. First, let me say thank you so much for telling Ryan and Brad's story in such an amazing way. When they were about 9, my dad had given them a cassette tape, yes, a cassette tape, of some zither music because his dad played the zither. He was a German and immigrated to the United States and played the zither. And so on that zither tape, Ryan and Brad heard some old German yodeling as well, and they started to imitate it. And they yodeled everywhere. They yodeled in the car, they yodeled in the house, they yodeled mowing the lawn, they yodeled everywhere and got better and better. And so we went to see an Australian yodeler performer that was performing in a town not too far away from us in Wisconsin, and his name was Wayne Horsborough. And so we heard him, and he sang and he yodeled, and we brought the guys home a tape or a CD of Wayne Horsborough, and they played it constantly, and they would just imitate the yodeling and the singing. And so it became pretty apparent that this was something they were really good at when they were about 9 or 10.
Wow, I love that story. That's amazing. So, what was the most challenging thing about raising talented yodeling twins?
The most challenging thing, I would have to say, one of the most challenging things was simply their age. These guys are 9 or 10 years old, and it's difficult in rural northern Wisconsin to find venues and places for them to sing at that age. And number two is with the type of music that they sang. There's just not a lot of outlets for old Western yodeling music in northern Wisconsin. Another challenge was, of course, their disability. At the time, they were diagnosed with ADHD and learning disabilities. But they also had kind of a hard time speaking to people. It was pretty obvious that there was some sort of a social delay there. And our main focus was helping them get through school at that point.
When I was talking to Ryan and Brad, they mentioned that they were misdiagnosed, or their diagnosis changed a little bit as they were growing up, and they knew that had an impact, but they didn't have all the details. They asked me to ask you. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more? I think it could be inspiring and helpful to others.
Ryan and Brad were diagnosed with ADHD and learning disabilities way back when they were in kindergarten. We sought supportive services when they were in birth to 3, and the term Asperger's syndrome or autism spectrum disorder, let alone neurodiverse, those words didn't exist back when the guys were little. And so as they went through school, their teachers would focus on, they can't do math. How are we going to help them with math? They have trouble with this. How are we going to help them with that? And no one ever mentioned the social aspects. And there were very obviously social aspects to the disability that were not enabling. They were kind of blocking Ryan and Brad from having those friendships and those strong ties with other kids like kids need. And as they got older, actually when they were out of high school, the diagnosis didn't change. The ADHD is still there. The learning disabilities are still there. But we know now what the name for the rest of it is. And when we found that, it was like a 50-pound brick had been taken off of my shoulders, because I knew that there was more. There was something else involved, and now we could put a name on it. And if I can put a name on it, then I can work with it, and I can help it, and I can help the guys.
I really love hearing how the pieces of the puzzle fall into place for you and them. That's really great. So, what other things helped you through the whole process? How were you supported and encouraged? What were the most beneficial support systems that you found?
Really, the things that helped me get through those challenges were the fact that I was a nurse working in public health and working at the schools at the time. So I had access to a lot of professionals to talk to and ask and get ideas of how to help the guys. Asperger syndrome and the autism spectrum wasn't really a thing back then in, the late 80s and the early 90s. And Asperger syndrome hadn't even been named at that point. So I did have a lot of support from school and from the teachers. There's a support group called CHAD. It's Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Disorder. And some friends of mine and I actually founded a chapter in northern Wisconsin. And that was a great support group for me to belong to, and lots of support from other parents of kids that had some disabilities.
That's really great. So, do you have any additional advice for any other parents who might be in a similar situation or have kids that are like Ryan and Brad?
My advice for other moms, other parents of kids with any sort of disability is that the kids are kids first, and we need to help them grow and learn and be supported, no matter what their talent is, whether they have a talent or not. We need to support our kids, and sometimes in non-traditional ways. Every kid doesn't have to grow up and go to college and become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. They need to follow their dreams, and you need to support those dreams, whatever they may be, whether they seem practical to you at the time or not. And I think that's my best advice. The other advice would be to read, search the internet, talk to other parents, learn as much as you can about your child and their disability. Because when Ryan and Brad were growing up, the modifications that they needed in school didn't really exist at that point in time. And so we would do things like, before they went to first grade, I got some desks from the school and I put them in the basement, and we just practiced sitting at desks and opening and closing the desk and putting things in and out, and just very simple things like that, that you can find that you can do at home to support the school and support your child. And then if they have a talent on top of it, you need to support that talent as well, and encourage them, because they'll grow in so many ways by following their dreams.
Thank you, Mary, so much for sharing those stories with me. They are so inspiring.